Welcome to the latest episode of Learning with Success, the show for parents of school-aged children, sponsored by Success Tutoring Online, helping students with academic advancement for over 20 years. And I'm your host, Armando Salcido. Today, our guest is longtime Burbank resident, Cynthia Wagner.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Great, thank you for having me.
Very good, very good. Now, for those of you that may not know, Cynthia Wagner is a college planner and owner of College Help Squad, which will be the focus of today's show. Cynthia is also an ambassador and member of the Burbank Chamber of Commerce, the Youth Services Chair and member Interact Advisor for the Burbank Noon Rotary, and is the president of the advisory board for the National Academy Foundation, NAF Burbank. In addition to all of that, Cynthia is the Community Services Foundation board member and affiliate member of the Burbank Association of Realtors, the Holiday Gift Basket Food Chair for the Burbank Coordinating Council, and the PR Chair and sustaining member of the National Charity League Burbank Chapter. Boy, you keep yourself busy there, don't you?
I love it, and it helps my students, so I have no complaints.
Very good, very good. So tell me about College Help Squad, what it is that you do, and how you help students and their families to get into college and or get through college, or explain what it is that you do.
Right, so College Help Squad really helps high school members. So we kind of start from that position of, what do you want to do as an adult? We get it that not everybody is doing what they got their degree in 30 years from now, but you need somewhere to start. So we always focus on major first, schools second, and then we work on the applications, essays, and then of course the FAFSA. So that's kind of what College Help Squad does in a nutshell.
So somebody they decide they want to go to college, they let you know. So how do you then help them to get there?
Sure. So we'll work with a Myers-Briggs type program to really break down who they are, their desires, passions, and what drives them, so that we can look at the factors that are important to them. 1, academically, 2, based on their GPA, 3, based on their major, and 4, honestly, what they do on their downtime, because that's so important. You have to have that balance. If it's all work, 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 and we haven't taken a look at, okay, do you want to be in the Greek system? Do you want to be in sports? Do you want to be doing maybe hiking and things during the weekend? We need to find that out so that we're finding that really good balanced school for them so that they can achieve those 4 years.
So you're really looking for a match of school to the student.
Correct. Yes, it's not just picking that name brand. In fact, sometimes the name brand is the worst place that some of these students can go.
Interesting. Okay. Now, you also mentioned the other day that as we were talking, you said that it is very competitive to get into college. And I think a lot of people know that. But now, would you say that it's more competitive now than, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
So the trajectory is just different because we had COVID. And so what happened with COVID is you had gap years, and students that opted not to go maybe just took a year off to go through the COVID process. So now the competitive nature is more about looking at those kids who took that year off or decided to go to community college and do online, because why pay to go to school when it's going to be online anyway? Right? So we have a lot of those kids now coming back in. The actual rate of students going to college right now has decreased. We are seeing that. We are seeing smaller schools closing. But our schools, our UCs are mighty, and our Cal States are really good. And so they have a lot of impact with students and families who want to attend, especially with our Cal Grants and other opportunities. So we're not seeing that so much here, but we might with maybe a smaller school locally, and I'm not saying Occidental's having financial issues, but with a 5,000 student school, they might see the momentum of less students attending versus Pepperdine. So it just depends. But yeah, definitely it's competitive in California. It's competitive with your name brand schools, and it's tougher to get in. because more students are applying to those schools. But if you want to go to a school, you want to get in and you want full tuition covered, there's always a school out there that will accommodate that.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Now, you also said something that I was not aware of. You said that basically it is harder for California residents to get into the UC or Cal State schools than it is for out of state students. Now, why would that be?
Along with the COVID scenarios, right now there's been a hit. As I was saying, during COVID time, so that was about 2 years, students opted not to go to school because why pay the $30,000 a year to go to a Cal State or $40,000 a year to go to a UC but live at home? So parents were saying, no, we want the school experience. So now there's this need to pick up financially. And so what's happened is a lot of the Cal States are opting to choose out-of-state students who can pay the $60,000 a year versus what we would pay, which is 20 to 25. And we are seeing that directly from our caseload with the UCs. So I have a student that has a very low GPA for San Diego State and got in over some of my higher GPA students. And we know that there's not an essay question, there's not an SAT, ACT comparison, it's GPA. So seeing that this family got in and is going to pay the $50,000 a year versus the in-state at 25, we've now been talking to our senators and our assembly members saying, wait a minute, what are you guys deciding here in this direction, because this doesn't make sense. And I get it that they need to pick up financially, but we have a right for our California students who are earning these GPAs, and there isn't an SAT or an ACT. So when all it is with the Cal States, the highest GPA wins, then let's go that route and not start taking students out of California who have a lower GPA but can afford it.
Interesting. So basically, it's a whole financial consideration for the schools. Those that are from out of state pay more than those that are in California residents, and so what happens is they're choosing, in some cases, or to a certain percentage of students, they're choosing more to have the out of state students because they actually get more income than those that are from California.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to embarrass families, but I have acceptances and it's really unfortunate. So, and again, we're going back to, I think this is COVID times. I think the Cal States need to pick up financially. And once they get past this wave, maybe we'll get back to normal, because I believe that there is a bill that was introduced through the Senate, and right now all students or all youth in California are getting a $50 kind of like a 529 card, and that's supposed to grow every year, and it's only supposed to be used, the condition is that it's for California students. Well, if you can't get into a California school, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17 years from now, what good is that card? So what is that money going to go back to California? So I really have a lot of questions to our local government to kind of figure out what they're doing and why.
Wow, interesting. Okay. All right. Now, I know that the one strategy that a lot of families are using, or some families are using, to try to actually cut costs for college is having the student attend a junior college or a 2-year college first before they transfer on over to a 4-year college. Now, is that a strategy that you recommend or not? And if so, why or why not?
Sure. So for our younger maturity wise and GPA wise students, it's a great strategy. It helps them learn how to be independent, learn how to adult, learn how to get their GPA up, and have some successes and wins in the community college arena. And I really support the California Promise and the initiatives. For a student who's 3.8 or higher, that's looking to go to a community college, a California community college, I really feel that that is not their wheelhouse. That's not their peers, because a lot of these peers usually have lower GPAs. And if they're going there just for the financial, my concern is that they might get burned out. It's not, they don't have the same rigor that they would expect from a college. And so sometimes we have to compare, is it really just a financial strategy? Okay, let's find a school that's going to give you the financial aid based on your GPA so that you can go to a 4-year instead of going to a community college just to have the California promise, but it's not the same peers and the same folks that you would typically be working with because you had that higher GPA. Sometimes I have some 4.1 parents who are like, should we do this? I'm like, no, your student is a 4.1 student. He or she worked really hard to get here. You want to send them off to community college. I'd rather send them off somewhere locally and have them live at home, but at least they're in the 4-year um, purpose to be able to get in and out in 4 years and have that degree. Because also community colleges are impacted. And so you're not necessarily getting completed with your 60 transferable units in 2 years. It's taking 2.5 to 3.
Wow. So, okay, so then the idea would be, so basically you do a whole strategy and analysis with the family to see which would be best for them to do. Um, to go to a 2-year community college, whether for financial, purposes or considerations, or to go directly to a 4-year, but basically a little bit more. So they basically jump right into the actual real college environment, the whole real college experience. Whereas if they're going to a community college, they may not so much, because a lot of times it'll be a nearby school. They'll be living at home, and it's just it's almost like an extension of high school.
Exactly. So it's taking a look at the student, it's taking a look at the situation. And so we assess each family, kind of what the
Interesting.
needs are, what the
Yeah.
student needs, and what the family needs. So if the
Right.
family's like, we can't afford, but the student can go to a 4-year and we can find financial aid, then we're going to try to seek that out.
Okay. Okay. Because in the long run, it appears that from what you're saying is that it actually then, and again, depending on the student, it's more beneficial for them to go right into the 4-year college and be able to just, move through and ideally complete within their 4 years, which makes it more a more certain than if they go through the 2-year route.
Right. Because keep in mind that with a 4-year university or college, they have acceptance rates. So they have a certain amount of seats. The community college level does not have that. Anyone can go. So can you imagine how many people are applying to colleges in those seats at the community college level? They can take, maybe let's use UCLA. So UCLA has 5,000 seats for freshmen.
Hmm.
They're at PCC, or even let's use Santa Monica College because that's the feeder into UCLA. They may have 7,000 freshmen applying from throughout California, because a lot of kids will come to Santa Monica to go to college to feed into UCLA, excuse me. So
Hmm.
imagine it being impacted and you can't take your basic classes or the classes required for your major. So now
Right.
you're there for 3 years. So, and
Right.
the California Promise is only 2 years. So now your trajectory is actually going to be longer, and there's burnout. The percentage rate of transfer from community college to 4-year is not as high as people think.
Interesting. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times the California Promise. Now, what do you mean by that exactly?
So the California Promise is the ability for a student to leave high school. You have to go right from high school to a community college. You have to show that you have a need, and they'll cover your tuition for 2 years. So your parking, your lab fees, your student fees, things like that aren't covered, but the tuition is. Some schools directly, like COC, College of the Canyons, LA Valley College, and the LA Community College District, will give those back to the families. And I'm not bashing on any schools, I'm just giving the facts. Glendale College, Santa Monica College, Pasadena City College do not give those funds back to the family. They use those to help with the counseling and the pathways programs for the California Promise. So the parents don't directly get that tuition money back. So you've got to ask the school when you're considering for community college, is this an opportunity where my tuition is going to be covered? Or is the California Promise being used in another way and I still have to pay the tuition? So we have
Hmm.
that conversation that goes on a lot.
Wow. Okay. So there are a number of different possibilities then.
hmm Yeah, you have
Wow.
to ask.
Okay. Okay. Now, another thing that you mentioned the other day, which I was not aware of and had not heard of, you mentioned something about college summer camp. Now,
Oh.
why is that? Uh, now, what is that, and why would students and their families want to do this?
So pre-college camps or or summer camps are really for those students that have higher GPAs that want to go and test to college. So you typically go for a week. So Tufts, Georgetown, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, UCLA, USC, they all of them have them. So this is for these higher ranking students that will get accepted. And they go typically based on the pre-major that they're considering, and they can be on campus, live on campus, and be taught by professors for a week, and so they get that experience. I've had students go who've come back saying, okay, I don't want to go to this school. And then I've had students come back from other schools saying, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the school I want to go to. And they've met with professors, they've met with admissions. And so they have an in, not a back door, but they've had an opportunity now to meet with admissions, to meet with the school. And so their name is on that list. And we can talk about strategic enrollment management, which is the front door in, but it's definitely a strategy to make sure that these colleges know about you before application season.
So it's kind of a trial test run in a way.
For both. For
Oh, that's
both.
true. Yeah, yeah, that's true for the student and for the college.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, I think pretty much everybody knows that going to college is pretty expensive, and while the covering the costs for some families is just no problem at all. I mean, they can write a check regardless of what the amount is. Oh no, I want to go to this college. Write the check, no problem. But I don't think that's the case for most families. I think most families have to really plan out and figure out what are they going to do financially. How are they going to swing it to cover the costs for college for their son or daughter or children if they have more than one, or how are they going to help the student if the student is going to kind of do it on their own? How can they contribute? So are there any specific strategies that you would recommend for families to help them work out how they will actually pay for college?
Right. So there's a ton of strategies. I'm not a financial advisor, but it's typically based on family need. So there's FAFSA, which is need-based aid. But then there's merit aid, which is based on the student's GPA, rigor, their extracurriculars, leadership, volunteer. So when you take a look at all of that, you need to create a balance and a strategy for the type of school that you want to go to, the type of school that's going to give money, because there's facts out there which indicate which schools give money and why and how. And so if you need truly a low tuition school, those are out there. Is that going to be good balance for the students? So sometimes when we're looking at these strategies with acceptances, we look at the final numbers. Okay, so is it about the number or is it about the school that they want to go to? Because sometimes the final number might be, 15,000 a year. Okay, that's all I'm paying. But the student's like, I don't want to go to this school. So we've got to try to figure out that balance that makes sense. Because if the student doesn't want to go to that school, they're not going to thrive, be successful, and keep moving on. You have to have balance there. So yes, we do work with families specifically. The FAFSA is now The EFC and the old way of thinking about FAFSA is gone. It is over. This year, the 2023 FAFSA for the 2024 school year is now going to be under the Student Aid Index. And I know we're probably going to get to this conversation in a minute, but the whole idea of it is that it's there to serve low-income families. So these strategies have to be sought out and kind of structured ahead of time so that we know what schools we're applying to. You don't want to apply to a Stanford or a Harvard or a Yale because they don't give merit aid, period. They don't have to because every student deserves it. So they can't because everybody would get a little piece of the pie. So some schools only look at need-based aid. So then you'll have schools that only look at merit and those extra accolades that these kids did to help fund their cost. So yeah, it's a total strategy of looking at where the students want to go, what's the cost, and what's the end result.
Okay, wow. All right, now since we're talking about finances, and you brought up the FAFSA, which stands for the free application for federal student aid. I had to look that up. Okay. Yes, exactly. So the FAFSA, and so now, and that is the form that is used by a lot of families to try to get government aid to help pay for college. Now, do you help families to fill out the FAFSA? Is that something that's easy for them to just fill out? Is it complicated? Tell me about it.
So the FAFSA used to have 140 something questions. Now it's down to 37 with the new student aid index, but still the questions are obtuse. So it might say, what is your income? What is your business? How much does your business make? So those questions, there's rules behind them. It used to be if you had under 100 employees, you didn't have to answer that question on the expected family contribution FAFSA. Now under the student aid index, you do have to answer it. Child support is now going to be considered an asset, which would actually be good for the parent who's receiving that because that's income that can be included towards, I forgot how the language is. All of this is changing, and I'm going to FAFSA classes each week with the Department of Education to get up to speed on all of this. So yes, the FAFSA is a little tricky. People say, oh yeah, it's really easy to fill out. Yes, there's a lot of simple questions, but if you don't answer them right, it can vary and change what you should be paying. So the Department of Education and the FAFSA is the tool that's used, and then once that's determined, it goes off to the school, and then the school decides what they want to give you. The FAFSA does not determine that. The FAFSA just determines what you should be getting. But not all schools have to follow that rule.
So the FAFSA is basically more fact-finding, gathering data, which then is provided to the schools. However, it's not just entering the information. There's actually a bit of strategy or information that you need to know for how you fill it out. Not that you would want to, fudge any of the answers, but more like knowing that if you answer of a certain level, or are there some things that you have to answer and others that you don't? So there's actually, even though the questions, like you said, there's 36 questions or something like that.
Yeah, 37 now.
37 questions. And they're probably not necessarily difficult questions. They're definitely questions that, if not handled correctly, could definitely impact a family financially if they want their kids to go to college then.
That is accurate. And the FAFSA used to open up in October, so you'd be able to start to look at the questionnaire in August. Now the FAFSA is going to be opening in December, so it will be after application season. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this rolls, because we know that the UCs and Cal States are due November 30th, and if FAFSA is opening up December, and we haven't been told if it's December 1st or December 31st, it's going to be really interesting. So we're still going to do our predeterminations over the summer and get everything in order so that at least we're ready once it opens. For those that are going to private schools, the CSS profile, which is the Consolidated Scholarship Service Profile, will probably be more in use than it has before, because since the FAFSA now has a December opening date, they'll probably go back to the CSS profile to get more of that information. And that's a 275 question profile. And it'll ask more specific questions like, what's your address? What is the average value of your home? What type of car do you drive? They'll want to know more about kind of your financials than the FAFSA. So
Interesting.
yeah, we're worried that that's coming back.
So then basically, so families have to actually apply to the college before they actually can even apply for the actual financial aid.
Correct. But the FAFSA, okay, so let's be honest, the FAFSA, you need to put the schools on the FAFSA anyway. So if you're applying to a college, you want to put that college on the FAFSA to have the FAFSA sent over to the school to determine your aid.
Got it.
So,
Got it.
so the FAFSA would know that anyway. And the new FAFSA has up to 20 schools. So now you can apply up to 20 schools on one document.
Wow. Okay. All right. Now, you started to say a bit about this, but I didn't quite get this. So now you said that there's some major changes that are happening with the FAFSA, and that you're actually now taking classes to really understand it fully. So what are some of these changes, or how do these changes impact families in general?
So one of the great changes is that there used to be two FAFSAs, one for the student and one for the parent. And sometimes it was tricky because as a parent, I would fill out my student's FAFSA because they're not going to get it. And I'm more concerned about the financials. But sometimes when we're thinking about it, we're answering the questions as though it's us. And so
Hmm.
that would actually hurt a student, because if a student is making 100 and something thousand a year, and you're like typing this information in, not emulating the student, but you're putting your information in, because why would they ask these kinds of questions? But they did. It actually created a problem. So now it's one FAFSA, so it has student information on top, parent information on bottom. So it's going to be a lot easier. We're going from 140 questions to 37. The DRT, which is the data retrieval tool right out of the IRS, is what's going to pull your IRS information. There's no way around that anymore. We used to do it manually, but now it's just being pulled. But that way the data is coming in right from the IRS, from your 1040. And so that will make it a lot easier for all of us, so that you don't have to fill in a lot of those questions, because it will be pulled from there. And yeah, the timeline in this is going to be a lot quicker, and there's a lot less questions to answer in one form.
But then you said that that's going to impact some families more than others, or
Uh,
some will not actually qualify for financial aid, whereas
okay.
they would have before.
So with the data retrieval tool, the IRS is just automatically going to be pulled and to be put onto the FAFSA. So it's going to automatically be submitted. So if you're above 100,000, you're not going to qualify for a lot of the California grants anymore. It's really going to be focused and triggered to low income families. So if you're low income, if you're below 60,000 in your household, fill out the FAFSA, do what you can, because you're going to get need-based aid. And two of my recommendations are to stay in your same state, because it will be honored there. And the second one is it won't be honored outside of the state. So if you're like me, I'm in California, but my daughter's in Oregon, they don't offer aid for us based on the FAFSA,
Hmm.
or Arizona or Nevada. So you think about that. The other thing that I just want to bring up is that the school district is requiring that you tell them that you submitted the FAFSA in order for your student to actually graduate and walk. You do not have to fill out that information. You can just say, I'm not submitting, because at this point, the FAFSA is really only going to be triggered for low-income families.
Okay. Now I'm curious. Now, why would the school district require to know whether or not somebody's going to be filling out the FAFSA as a requirement for a graduation? I don't understand that.
Exactly. It's I believe it's a government push to make sure that we're all filling out the FAFSA. And really, I'll have families that are saying, no, it's not necessarily necessary. I make too much money. I'm not going to qualify. I'm not even going to bother. And if my child's going off to a college outside of the state, I know I'm not going to qualify. So why? And so some families are like, do we have to do this? And it's like, no, you don't. If you want need-based aid, you do need to fill this out if you want need-based aid. But if
Right.
it's merit aid, or if it's something where you, like you said, you're going to write the check, you don't need to worry about it. And with these questions, with these 37 questions, it's going to eliminate a lot of us who were somewhere in the middle.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, so you definitely help families to look at it from a strategic um, um, way of looking at what they need to do to, from a financial view, selection of school, etc. Um, and like with us, with Success Tutoring Online, what we do is we mainly help students academically with their, to understand the material that they are studying, that they really understand it, and they can apply it. So that's what we do. Now, do you also help students to get with strategies to get through and completed with college, or is the main emphasis basically just to qualify for and get into college?
Right now, we have a lot of transfer students who are working with us who have sought us out. I think a lot of them were from COVID times, and so they're like, okay, we're finishing up Moore Park, Pierce, COC. We have a couple of those, Pasadena City College. And they're like, okay, so how do we get into AUC? Or how do we get into another school? What are our options? So we have been helping a lot of transfers this year. And yes, we do have what's called a transitional advisory team. So first year of college, it's really hard. Adulting for kids, for our students, is hard, and sometimes they don't realize they need to make choices. Sometimes they make mistakes. Maybe they go down a wrong path and didn't mean to, but they're not going to talk to mom and dad about it because under the FERPA agreements with the colleges, they don't have to. And so sometimes moms and dads hire us to just help that student because we're trying to be an advisor and we're also confidential. And so we'll help these students, and we've had some luck with that and able to get these students back on track and where they need to be going. And so it's just transitional advising. And we typically do that for 1 year just to make sure that, okay, you're off to college. And then when mom and dad are calling the school and the school saying, sorry, we won't talk to you, we're here to help and just say, okay, kiddo, what's going on, and what can we do to kind of get you back on track?
Wow. Wow. Interesting. Okay. Um, and it is true, though. I mean, making if you're living at home, you're a kid living at home, and then suddenly you are out on your own. I mean, they all want to go out on their own, but then when they do that, it's like it's a whole new world. It's completely new. You
Hmm.
have to go and figure out how to. You pay for your own toothpaste and your own toilet paper and your own, everything, and before it always just used to appear.
Yes, and I had a student that was like, I have to get up and make my breakfast. Yeah, well, oh, yeah, welcome to adulting. But then I'm late for class. Okay, well then get up a half an hour earlier, make your breakfast, or go buy your breakfast, if you're in the dorm, so that it's covered. Just get up a half an hour, earlier than you expected. So yeah, it's retraining kind of, yes, you have to do all of this. You have to do your laundry. How does laundry work? Okay, so it's fun to watch this experience because they're really growing and they're coming out of their shell. And after the year, 1 year of adulting, they're like, okay, I got it. It's great.
At least making progress on that.
Yes.
So so okay, well, now, so the whole subject of actually qualifying for college academically, and then planning financially, and then working out the strategy for getting into college, and how to get there, and selecting the college, and I mean, it's like a huge topic and subject. So I know that we could actually probably talk for hours and hours and hours and still not cover everything that could be talked about. So for today, let me ask you this here. I, I I think we have covered quite a bit here, but Is there anything that you feel, or anything else that you feel that parents should know, um, so that you can help them either to get into college or qualify, or just something that they should know from your view as the from the College Help Squad?
We don't know what we don't know. And for me, whenever I need help with a student, the first person I'm calling is success tutoring because that's their wheelhouse. They're going to be able to help them. And I think it's kind of the same. I'll have parents who think, oh, we're going to move to this state, so we're going to get in state tuition. I'm like, no, you're not, because it's based on prior year. Or, we're going to automatically get into a UC because my child has a 4.1. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily going to happen. It's in the little things and it's in the details. And I think that's sometimes the little things that we forget or we don't do or we don't stay on top of or the student doesn't stay on top of that I think is something I can pass on to the parent, because not understanding how this beast works, because everything that just mentioned was the process. But after that application is submitted, there's so much more to do. And that's where we stay on board until they actually get their final acceptance and into the college of their dream. And that's, I think, the difference, because we can all submit and apply and we do all of that hard work to help these kids, but then not understanding how the portal works, how to communicate, how to check on wait list if you're in, if you've been denied, and how to send a letter on that to see if we can negotiate that or change that. All of that stuff is in the details, and that's the little stuff that I think we forget, because we think once applications are done, we're done. And it's not. There's so much more, so much more.
In one sense, that's just the start.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now if families have questions or they would like to get more information about your company, how do they contact you, or what should they do?
My website is collegehelpsquad.com. That's college help. People think it's health. collegehelpsquad.com, or you can reach out to me at cynthia@collegehelpsquad.com. And my phone number is also on my website. That's the easiest. And you know what? Meaning myself and my counselor, Carrie, we talk to families all the time. We'll have a one-on-one with you, no charge, just to kind of get an idea of what's going on, what the needs are, and what's kind of happening with the breadth of the family, from the parent side, from the student side, to see if this makes sense for the student. Because I'll be honest with you, if as parents, we are so into it and we want our kids to go to college. But if that student doesn't want to go, it's like pulling teeth.
Now, also, I have been hearing more and more, and I think I agree with this. I mean, first of all, college is not necessarily for everyone. You have others that go to trade schools, that go into, there's different routes. But I will say this, what I always talk to students about all the time and their families is whether they are going to college or going to some other route, they definitely have to have a goal and they have to actually work out how to get there. It's not like when I talk to students all the time, especially in high school, I ask them, okay, what are you planning to do when you're done with school? Oh, I'm going to go to college. Okay. And what are you planning to study? Oh, I don't know. Now, what I always tell them is, okay, you should pick a major or an idea of what you want to get into. Now, it may change and most likely will change, but if you have a goal or if you have a target to get to, it helps you so much more. And not only in where you're trying to get to, but also even in what you're studying, helps you to look at how you can align what you're studying towards what you want to actually do, and again, it may change, but I think it's actually good. So, well, I'll tell you, Cynthia, this is for me anyway. This has been a very, very informative session here today, and I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Obviously, when I read all those things that you do, it's like, wow, okay, so you do a lot. So you took definitely I appreciate the fact that you took some time out of your very, very busy schedule to help us out, to tell us about the College Help Squad and what you can do, and some things that parents need to actually look at or consider if they're going to be going to college, or they want to have their child going to college, and some things to consider, just before, but also some things that they should look at many years before, when the child is much younger. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us as a guest. I think it was very informative.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I want to thank all of our listeners and all those watching on YouTube for joining us today. I hope that you have found the information valuable. And if you haven't already, please subscribe so as not to miss any of our scheduled upcoming interviews. Okay, thank you very much, Cynthia.
Thank you.
All right, bye. As mentioned at the beginning of the show, Learning with Success is sponsored by Success Tutoring Online. Our administrative offices are located in Burbank, California, but we provide tutoring or academic advancement to students throughout the United States.